All right, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. I just had a couple of quick thoughts regarding what's currently going on with the with Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and America. And I don't have much time, but I just want to kind of spill out some thoughts as unfortunately my American president keeps getting caught in lies, and it seems as though the only people he's fooling are Americans because the rest of the world, I guess, is well and deaf and totally understand what Donald Trump is doing and what he's not doing because he just stated that he's talking to Iranian government officials, and Iran came out and said that that was untrue. So everybody keeps asking the wrong question. They keep asking, is Trump winning? And I believe it's the wrong question. The real question is, what does winning even mean when the facts don't line up with the story that's being told? Because right now, what we are watching is something very dangerous, not just war, but narrative warfare, because he keeps going back and forth to and from of what's going on and what's not going on. He alluded and stated that America and Israel controls the Strait of Hormuz. And in that case, then America and Israel is responsible for the Strait of Hormuz being shut down and not Iran, which we know that Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz because they're so close in proximity with their missile defense systems and their drones. President Trump has made multiple claims about the Iran situation, claims about strength, claims about control, claims about communication. And on the surface, it sounds very powerful because America is strong, America is dominant, and America is in control. Now, the first are definitely true. America is strong, America is dominant, but in control, I don't even think at this point Americans are believing that to a certain degree. But then you start peeling back the layers of the onion. You start to do a little bit of digging, and things don't just get murky, they start contradicting each other. And as I was stating before, the Strait of Hormuz. What's Trump's position? American controls it, right? Dominates it, right? It sounds good. It sounds strong. Sounds like something you want your president to say. What I want my president to say, because we're already full-fledged in this war, I would want him to say that the war with Iran is over. We will no longer support Israel, but that's not what he's saying. So here's a reality that nobody wants to really say out loud. You don't control a choke point, okay? You don't control a choke point that Iran can shut down with mines, drones, and swarm boats in hours. That's not control. That's contested territory with global consequences. Iran doesn't need to own the strait. They just need to make it unusable. And guess what? They've built their entire military strategy around that exact same scenario. Because don't forget, Iran had a multitude of different missile silos and military bases underground that that America has yet to reach, have yet to destroy. Because we can talk about Iran for a second, because this is where people get comfortable and start to make mistakes, that European colonialism mistake. They hear Iran and think outdated military, like North Korea, right? Sanctioned economy. They're cut off from the world. They're an easy opponent. That's lazy thinking, in my opinion, because Iran has one of the largest missile arsenals in that particular region. They have advanced drone warfare capabilities that didn't really cost them that much money, what, $20,000 per drone? And to confirm the number that President Trump actually asked for Congress is 200 billion. Because yesterday I was unsure. I believe I was like 20 billion or 200 billion because I saw it in the news flash, but it was $200 billion. What we're talking about right now is an asymmetric naval tactic designed specifically for U.S. weakness. It's kind of like modern warfare guerrilla attacks, proximity networks across the Middle East. This is not Iraq in 2003. This is not the war that I fought in. This is not Afghanistan. This is a country that has spent decades preparing to fight a long war, not a quick one. And that brings up to another claim, because Trump says he's been in communication with Iranian officials, that he had these back channel talks and negotiations and claimed it as progress. But the Iran turns around and says, we're not talking to President Trump. Now you killed the previous Ayatollah. Now his son has stepped up. He's the new Ayatollah, and the president is scratching his head of Iran because supposedly talks are happening secretly, and Iran is lying. Talks are not happening, and Trump is allegedly exaggerating. On both sides, in my opinion, are playing a game of strategic messaging. But here's the issue, ladies and gentlemen. The American people are being asked to trust a version of reality without verification. We continue not to have verification. And that's where things get dangerous. Because while the narrative says we're winning, the reality looks escalation across multiple fronts, attacks on U.S. allies within the region, rising global tensions, oil markets on edge, rising gas prices and grocery prices in America, and a war that's not ending anytime soon. We're in week 4 now. This is not a clean victory. It's a slow burn with global consequences. And let me be clear, because I know how this goes. This is not anti-American, by the way, because I love my country. But loving my country doesn't mean you clap for everything it does. No. It means you demand it to be better, stronger, more honest. But here's the uncomfortable truth. America doesn't need propaganda to be powerful. We don't need to pretend to control things we don't fully control. We don't need to sell wins while risks are attacking up behind the curtain. That's not strength, that's branding. And branding works until reality shows up. So the question isn't, is Trump fooling the world? The world is watching too closely for that. And you guys are not falling for it. America's not falling for it. The American citizens are not falling for it. There's just so many people not falling for this. The real question is he selling a version of reality that America wants to believe? Because if that story feels good, if it sounds strong, if it reassures people, most won't ask. Is it actually true? And that's where, in my opinion, power hides. Not in what's said, okay, not what's said, but in what's accepted without question. Because history has shown us something over and over again. The loudest declaration of victory, and sometimes made in the middle of a war, that's just getting started. Unfortunately, this may just be the beginning of the war and not the ending of the war. And if we don't learn how to separate true strength, meaning ending the war, that's how America will show strength. And here's another high road that America can take. We can come out and say that we were tricked, we were bamboozled, we were manipulated, and that we should have never gotten inside of this war. That's true strength. Admitting when you're wrong. See, it's easy when you're right, is it not? Oh, yes, it's easy when you're right, you don't have to admit anything because you're right. But true strength from a nation, from a personal standpoint, is admitting when you're wrong, admitting that you was misled. So we really have to separate strength from storytelling. And it's possible we won't know the difference until it's too late. Let me see what your comments are. Good to see you live. What's going on? Good evening. How can we actually legitimize verification? Well, you need independent sources. You need sources coming from the UN. And because the UN is a European and American ran organization, you also need a third party oversight committee that's not just part of the European world. You need government officials who are not on the payroll, deriving from India, Turkey, the different countries in Africa, China. You need all the world players who are not embedded inside of the UN and on that payroll. So again, there needs to be people who have been known to speak truth and come out, because there's been multitude of books that people is now confirming that they were stating the truth. We need those people on these oversight committees. We need an oversight committee for the UN, because don't forget the UN is the same UN that came up with a partition plan to sell land in Palestine to allocate to the Jews, right? A lot of the first initial land came out of a deal. They supposedly, allegedly paid Palestine for the land, the original borders, and sold that to Israel. And then through war, conquest, battles, skirmishes, etc., those Israeli borders grew and expanded. We need a truth oversight committee. Well said. That's exactly what we need. But nevertheless, those are my thoughts. Gotta go. Sorry it was quick, but I had to get that off my mind. You guys have a great and wonderful evening, morning, and day.